Hey everyone, good afternoon. It's Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and this is a special edition of Higher Ed Live. I'm Mallory Wood, Director of Marketing at mStoner, and your host for this afternoon's edition of Higher Ed Live, which is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, a series of professional development web shows and podcasts which are always free and accessible to you in the archives at higheredlive.com and on iTunes. Be a part of our broadcast by tuning in live and sharing your insights and questions using the hashtag Higher Ed Live on Twitter. You can receive weekly updates with live show dates and times by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter, and we'll tweet out a link to that in just 1 minute. So today's show is awesome, and a roundtable recap of last week's web conference at Penn State, which you didn't hear this from me, but it is one of my favorites in this industry. Not biased, but I do love it. And our panel of guests today include organizers, participants, and conference presenters. But first, I'd like to give a few shout-outs to our sponsors. Higher Ed Live is produced by my employer, mStoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. This week, mStoner is hosting an in-depth 2-part webinar series focused on brand strategy. That's taking place on Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll be tweeting out a link where you can learn more and register soon. OmniUpdate is the leading web content management system provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. And our third sponsor today is FormStack, a robust online form building solution. The platform's marketer-friendly features help higher ed professionals connect with their communities, and their intuitive drag and drop interface makes it easy to create web forms without writing code. Love FormStack. You should definitely check it out, and you can double your engagement rates at formstack.com. We'll tweet out some links about our sponsors in just a moment. So we have quite the panel of guests on the show today that include, as I said, conference organizers, presenters, and attendees. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. So Patty, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Patty Fantask. I'm the overall conference chair, and I work at IT Communications at Penn State.
Jennifer?
Hi, my name is Jen Montmany, and I am the Marketing and Communications Chair for the Web Conference at Penn State, and I too work for IT at Penn State doing communications for ITS.
Awesome. Dave?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Tyler. I'm the Social and Digital Media Manager at the College of Rockport State University in New York, and I'm also the publisher of Link, the Journal of Higher Education Web Professionals.
Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Herring. I'm the Web Content Coordinator for the Kogod School of Business at American University.
And last but not least, Ryan.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Moorjohn. I'm the Social Media Community Manager and Content Strategist over here down in Florida International University.
Awesome. I am so glad that you are all with us today, and I see that the back channel is already live and active, which is great. Hello to everyone who is watching from work or home. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. I'm sure that we have some folks watching this broadcast who are not familiar with the web conference at Penn State. So Patty, I would love to start by asking you to give us a little bit of the history of the web conference and give us a sense of the planning that goes into pulling off such a high-quality conference each year.
Sure thing, Mallory. Well, the web conference started in 1998. We only had about 100 attendees back then, and it was all Penn State employees. And from there, it grew to about a steady stream of 300 people, but remained within Penn State until 2010 when we opened it up to the world. So since then, we've grown fairly steadily, and this year we had approximately 560 attendees, with still just over 300 were Penn Staters, but we also had more than 200 who were from other institutions and business concerns across the country and Canada. So what does it take to put this thing on? I can tell you we've already been planning for 2015. It really is year-long planning and year-long plus. And the only way that it gets done is we have this amazing committee of really dedicated volunteers who just love this conference and will do whatever it takes to make it a great experience for everybody. This year we started a leadership team that consists of Karen Hackett, Stevie Rocco, and myself. and we put together sort of the overarching plans and make a lot of the big picture decisions so the rest of the group can really concentrate on some more detailed work and not have to worry about things. So we really tried to have a lot of fun, and we hope that it shows whenever it comes time to experiencing the conference, because when we're having fun, we feel like we can make the event more fun. So really, it's all about the people and giving them a stellar experience.
I love that. I think that's so true. And Patty, your leadership is one of the big reasons why this conference goes off without a hitch every year. And so I think, I'm not sure anyone ever thanked you. Maybe I missed that breakfast, but I think, you deserve a round of applause for all of your work. And needless to say, it's pretty clear that you've seen a lot of Penn State conferences. What do you think are some of the things that made this year's conference really special and different?
Well, every year we have a lot of first-time attendees, so we try and always make it very special. But it keeps changing. As I said earlier, we get more and more people who aren't from Penn State, and so it gets more and more diverse every year, which makes it more interesting, at least to us, because we get new ideas, new thoughts, new people, new energy. We also started getting 4 keynotes. Up until this time, we had 2 keynotes, which is fabulous. But we also, besides having our usual really strong web-focused keynotes, we also tried to get some that were more creative and inspirational. So, really, we focus on the attendee experience. We try to pay attention to the details, and so every year we build on the experiences of past years and the lessons that we learn from them, because we want to keep improving.
That's awesome. And actually, that's a really great lead-in because except for you, Patty, and Jennifer, the rest of our guests today are actually all first-time conference attendees. So, Ryan, I'd like to turn this question over to you. Why did you choose to come to this particular web conference all the way from Florida, and do you think it was worth the trip?
Yeah, I actually heard about PSU when I attended Confab Higher Ed, which was in Atlanta, I think in November, and just talking to some of the attendees there and at the conference, they were talking about PSU, and I was kind of curious about what that was, and obviously Confab Higher Ed is a very valuable conference. And these people were, I thought to be thought leaders at the conference. So spoke to them, kind of looked it up, and saw the program. Very good program, really good, nice pedigree of people from higher ed, people from outside of higher ed, which is kind of what I like. I really want to see what's going on in higher ed, but also beyond it as well. I feel you can get inspiration from that too. So pitched it to my higher ups, and they gave me the okay. So went over, and yeah, it was definitely worth it. A lot of great presentations, a lot of good stuff on digital higher ed learning, and the keynotes are really great too. And it's also really good to go to a higher ed conference at an institution, which I think is kind of interesting. Gives it a nice little, a nice different pace. I've gone to other higher ed conferences that were just kind of like just in the middle of a city. So this was a nice change of pace, nice setting too.
That's actually a really great point, Ryan, that I never thought of. When we go to other conferences like Confab, like you said, you're at a hotel in the middle of a city, and there really is something special about the Penn State conference, being at Penn State, although, Patty, I say that, and I'm not advocating for sleeping in dorms, so please don't write that down for 2015. But I think that's a really awesome point. You can just feel the energy of being in a college town, and I think that's what definitely gives this conference some special sauce. So that's awesome. Laura, you're also a first-time attendee. You didn't travel as far as Ryan, but what are your thoughts overall on the conference? Was it worth it?
I think the conference was definitely worth it. Not only was this my first year at PSU, this was just my first higher ed conference in general. I'm still relatively new to higher ed, but several of my colleagues have been to PSU in the past and couldn't recommend it highly enough. And I came away with a bunch of new ideas in terms of content and strategy, and just really felt my personal creativity get a recharge, which is nice this time of year between semesters. Like, this is really when we have the chance to dig in deep on personal projects or newer projects and really get going.
Yeah, for sure. I always come home from a conference super inspired, like I can take on the world and I'm ready to tackle all the things. So
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah, I love that you felt that way too. Are there any particular projects, Laura, that like maybe you're really fired up to tackle now that, you know, you've maybe learned some new skills at the conference?
I think just a really big one, we have a big anniversary coming up that we'll be celebrating throughout the academic year. So a lot of the presentations really gave me exciting ideas for that, especially yours, Mallory, which I might touch on later. So thanks.
I did not lead her into that question, I promise. All right, Dave, you are pretty seasoned when it comes to the higher ed world, and you know you're super active on Twitter. So this wasn't your first rodeo, but it was your first Penn State conference. So what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I think it was absolutely a great conference, and honestly, I feel like I was missing out all these years that I saw everybody talking about all the great things they were seeing down at Penn State in the summer, and I figured it was time to throw my hat in the ring and see if we could get down there. So it was great to get down there for the first time and saw a lot of great presenters, came home with a lot of great ideas. I definitely don't regret my decision at all, and I'll definitely be coming back.
Cool. And I know you presented at the conference, Dave. I'm going to hang on to that question for just a little bit, because actually what I'm curious about is what did you think about the keynote speakers? You know, we haven't touched on that yet. And one of the reasons I love the Penn State conference is because I think the keynotes, the lineup is just unparalleled. It's an amazing lineup every year, and we even had some keynote-worthy workshop presenters this year. So what were some of the points that resonated with you, Dave, from the keynotes, and what were some of your favorites this year?
Well, I'll say a couple things. I really enjoyed the format of having that many keynote speakers, actually. I felt like I got you know, a conference worth of good ideas out of just the keynote speakers. And I think one of the things I was seeing throughout the couple of days of the conference was that the keynotes were all seeming to deal on something I'll call remembering the humans. You know, each presenter was talking about ways to either use the web or create things on the web that really remember and recall the humanity of the people who are using it, which I think is a really key point. You know, whether you're writing code or you're something that simplifies the user experience, or you're designing for actions rather than screens like Josh Clark was talking about, or even just something like you know, crowdsourcing all that video that Tiffany was talking about, or how Hitmonk was adapting to changing things on the fly because their users were really throwing away all their preconceived notions about how people were going to use the site. You know, there was a lot of, I was really struck by everybody talking about how they were really focusing on the humanity and the users and the people who make up this thing we call the web, and sometimes I think we forget that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Laura, I know that you really liked Tiffany's keynote. You want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yes, I thought Tiffany Saenz' keynote was incredible. Not just the things she's doing with crowdsourced video and the projects she's able to form from that, which with the photojournalism background is just amazing, but I really liked her touching on a little bit of the failure aspect, especially managing social media for KOGOD. It can get really disheartening when you think you have this great hashtag or this great idea to involve students and alumni, and sometimes they fall a little flat. So it was really great to see someone at Tiffany's level step up and say, yes, I've had these great videos with these great collaborations, but you know, I've put out prompts that haven't worked either, and you just keep moving.
Yeah, it's not always easy to say, like, I did something and it didn't go very well, right? So to have a keynote standing up there and saying, you know, I failed I failed at these things and they just didn't work, but here's some stuff that stuck. I thought that was really interesting. And I have to say the keynotes this year, there was such a variety in the topics that they were speaking about. So Laura, while Tiffany is stuck with you and it was focused on crowdsourced video and those type of things, I know that for Jennifer, it was Jeremy Keith's keynote, which was very different. So Jennifer, why don't you unmute yourself and then tell us a little bit about what you thought.
I really, really love Jeremy Keith's keynote because I feel like, for me, one of the marks of a really great keynote is that they can span the whole gamut and they can give you this really abstract, theoretical, like high-level perspective of what's going on, and then they can also take you down into the nitty-gritty and say, no, I'm not just here to inspire you. I can also tell you how that's applied or how that looks or why what I'm talking about is important and how you can do this in your job. And what he was talking about was progressive enhancement. And so he took you back to this level of like from a 300,000 foot perspective talking about HTML, CSS, and then Java, and then kind of getting deeper into the nitty-gritty. And he just did a great job of bringing that all back around and giving you the why and not just the how, I thought.
For sure. Yeah, that was a great keynote. And I thought it was great to kind of kick off the day on Monday with that one, because I think it really got like, especially I think maybe for a first timer, like you walked into breakfast, you sat down, and then that keynote just kind of slapped you in the face. I was like, all right, here we are, ready to learn at Penn State. So I thought that was really awesome. And Ryan, I want to throw this question over to you. Last but not least, I know that you really liked the co-founder of Reddit's keynote, and it's interesting because he was kind of a last-minute addition, but I thought his keynote was one of my favorites too. So Ryan, why don't you share some of the points that resonated with you?
Yeah, kind of going off of what Jennifer said as to what makes a good keynote, you kind of introduce this really broad idea and kind of apply it to, the quote-unquote nitty-gritties. And I feel like Alexis's talk, which was kind of about just pushing creativity forward and trying to not only be creative, but if you can and you have the resources available to fund creativity. I feel like he talked a lot about how he co-founded Reddit and how different circumstances went for him and or against him, but all of it kind of led to him co-founding Reddit. And I like that he applied that to settings kind of like the Renaissance, or with Michelangelo, where a bunch of guys just gave Michelangelo a ton of money to just make art, and he came up with a masterpiece, the Sistine Chapel. And I really liked that idea of creativity and funding it as well if you can. So that was a really cool talk from Alexis, and he's also like a really nice dude. We talked to him after the keynote, and he's like a really sweet guy. So.
Yeah, it was really awesome that Alexis came out to the bar, like had a couple drinks with us. That was really nice to be able to have that follow-up conversation, which usually you only get to have with people who are presenting the sessions afterwards. But to have some of the keynotes, and Jeremy Keith was there like the whole time. So that was really, really cool. And I guess Alexis taught me not to ever raise my hand again, but we'll keep that one here if you attended his session, you know what I mean. So actually, let's switch gears a little bit, because the keynotes were really awesome, but the meat of the Penn State web conference is the sessions that are presented from people like you and me and anybody watching. So Jennifer, I want to throw this over to you because I think it'd be good to give viewers an overview of the different tracks and the different sessions that take place at the conference. And then we do have some conference presenters in this Google Hangout. And I'll let each of you kind of chat a little bit about what you presented on.
Awesome. So for those of you that were not at PSU Web this year, we have 6 tracks. And those 6 tracks are programming, design and development, usability and accessibility, content, marketing, and training and education. And so with these 6 tracks, we really are going for diversity and kind of tending to the full person of the web anyone that is involved with the web, especially because, and this is a theme that I heard so much throughout the conference, and I think is really special about what the web makes possible, but especially kind of what ends up happening in higher ed, is that very few of us are just kind of one thing. We often end up having to wear a lot of different shoes. And so the marketing people are doing some content strategy, and the content strategist is probably doing some design and development. And there's a lot of overlap. So I think by kind of building out this very diverse track schedule, it gives the people an opportunity to kind of push the limits or step out of what is familiar to them and really try something that, hey, I have to do this in my job. It's not really my skill set. How can I learn this more? And instead of looking at the web in a unilateral view of just one plane, it takes it and makes it a lot richer because, and this is something that we heard from all of our keynotes, that's what it is. It's this space that we've never seen before, that you can't kind of think about one component without thinking about all the components. And I think that's really what the different tracks try to do at the conference.
For sure. And Patty, spinning off of my last question, do you want to, each conference has a theme at Penn State. What was the theme of this year's?
This year we chose the theme of the future-friendly web. And where we got that from was, well, a long time ago I started following Jeremy Keith and Luke Wroblewski and a whole lot of the people from An Event Apart. And I remember one year they went away on this retreat, and out of this retreat came this, what I feel is like a movement called the Future-Friendly Way of doing the web. So they put together a site called futurefriend.ly, which really explains it better than I can, but just sort of in a nutshell, it's when you work in a future-friendly way, you're able to work more agilely. You're able to better handle whatever happens, no matter what the new technology is.
Awesome. And I think that in some ways, all of the sessions, really did tie back to that theme, which was great. I think that the track chairs did a really nice job selecting a big range of sessions, but ones that all really helped, push the web forward in a future-friendly way. So I thought that was a great theme this year. And I would actually like to throw this question now over to our first-time attendees. What sessions were the biggest hits for you? Were there any that really surprised you? And in general, which were you most able to relate or draw inspiration from? And I think I'll start with Ryan this time.
One of the biggest talks for me was Ron Bronson's talk about Tumblr. And coming from being a social media manager where I'm kind of managing and trying to grow the Tumblr for my institution, this is a really good talk because he kind of nailed a lot of interesting points that I'd never really thought of, but it kind of always had them in the back of my mind, is that Tumblr is a kind of a place for not kids, but just young people. So, and it's a very it's an environment that doesn't have a lot of brands in it participating. So the idea that if a brand or some kind of entity goes onto Tumblr to engage, it better be really good content. It better provide really, really good content because it's competing with all the other good content that's being put on by the users of Tumblr. So I kind of got that idea, and I really started to kind of go with it coming back here. I really liked also Joel Goodman's talk, which is also in the marketing track. It was about thinking beyond academia and higher ed, which was really good. Just kind of trying to make us think differently about our projects, whether it's social or content strategy or marketing in general. Just kind of think differently, and he drew upon that Monsters Inc. parody of the academia, the higher ed website, and it was kind of like a huge blow to higher ed web, I would say, because we've kind of become a parody, so in a way, so it'd be that talk really helped in pushing our minds into a different direction and thinking differently, which I really liked.
Yeah, Ryan, Joel Goodman's, if I had to pick one session that was my favorite, I would have to say Joel's was mine. And I loved how, I really loved his Monster Inc. example too. And I think it's interesting because there's definitely navigation and information architecture issues that do need to be consistent in higher ed. And I think, like, I've heard Michael Stoner draw parallels to like shopping and retail sites. Like if you went to Macy's.com and it said like polka dots, leather, yellow as your main navigation, you'd be a really frustrated user. You're used to it saying women's, men. But it is so interesting that, beyond maybe some of those IA standards, higher ed sites, across the board very much look similar enough that Monsters Inc. can parody it. And that's something worth thinking about. So I agree that was a really great point. And I also loved how he showed all the different websites from the airline industry.
I
thought that was really interesting. Yeah, did you have something you wanted to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, that example really drew upon that. You're right. Like higher ed, we kind of need to hold the same type of infrastructure and information architecture because it's higher ed and everyone's looking for pretty much the same type of things. But what that showed us, like, just think differently, try to think of a new way of showing this exact same infrastructure and information architecture in a different way. So that they showed American Airlines, the way American Airlines has you book a flight, and then they showed Virgin Airlines, which Virgin Airlines has an incredibly user-friendly interface and really good usability and UX. So just to think differently and kind of draw inspiration from those big brands and input that into higher ed.
Yeah, and I bet we can tweet this out, but I believe it's like beta.virgin.com or something like that, Virgin Atlantic or whatever their website is, put beta in front of it. And Joel was showing that as like this new, very future-friendly, forward-thinking way. And I do love what they've done with that whole experience. I wish I could use that website, but unfortunately, they're not in Albany, New York yet. Maybe one day. but yeah, I just thought that was a super interesting talk. Let's switch gears for just a second because we've been talking a lot about the marketing track. I'm not biased just because I'm the co-chair, but I know that Laura had some favorites outside of the marketing track. Laura, do you want to talk about those sessions?
Sure. I think one of the sessions that I got the most out of, that probably got my creativity flowing a little more than the others, was Laura Laramore's infographics for non-designers. Infographics are so hot right now and so popular and such a great way to present a lot of information that can maybe be a struggle to do so with words or traditional pictures. And her talk was really friendly with different tools that are available maybe for free or almost free and are very simple to use. So not everybody has to be a highly trained graphic to use them. And while I do have some great graphic designers that I get to work with, it's nice to know now that I have some tools and tips that I can dive in and experiment a little on my own instead of always having to get help at the beginning stages of projects instead of just maybe fine-tuning at the end. And then another session that I really enjoyed that I think has a lot of practical application as far as like team-wide goes instead of just personally bringing back was the Harmony in Higher Ed session with Mayan Plout and Elena Weens. Like I mentioned, I'm still relatively new to higher ed, only about a year and a half in, and so I feel like there are still a lot of times where I'm navigating, how does my team interact with the other teams within the school, and not just the students and alumni, but our admissions teams and so forth, and we really should all be working together because we're all promoting the same institution. And they had a lot of really great ideas and tips for really getting the most out of everyone at your institution.
Awesome. Yeah, they're two seasoned presenters, and I loved that session as well. I thought that they did a really nice job. I walked away from it feeling like invigorated, like ready to bring harmony to higher ed.
Exactly.
Exactly. And just in 1 second, folks, we're going to tweet out a link to eDuniverse, where we've been collecting a lot of the web conference presentations. So we'll tweet that out in just a second. That's a great page to bookmark. Those session recaps and the different slide decks are going to live on that site for a very long time. So definitely favorite that site. So Dave, why don't I throw this one over to you? What was one of the sessions that really struck you?
Well, I'm gonna throw in a plug for 2 of them quickly, actually, and I don't mean to embarrass Jen here, but I thought Jen and Derek's session on developing your social media strategy internally was really terrific, and I've actually already come back and I'm trying a little small-scale experiment with Yammer based on their suggestions and their information. So we just got that up and running since I've been back in the office. And also, I'll throw in a plug for Colleen Brennan-Barry, who may have been the busiest person at the conference, aside from the conference organizers. She presented twice, but I sat in on her project management session, and really that was just great in terms of keeping yourself organized, and a lot of good thoughts about how to get that project, that great idea that's in your head, through the minefield of people in your offices, and how to work with those personalities. It was really, really great stuff.
Hey Jennifer, why don't you give us kind of a recap of your presentation, since Dave kind of nicely walked you into that.
I know, shout out to Dave. Thanks, Dave. That is awesome. I'm so glad to hear that it was helpful. But so my co-presenter and I, Derek Burns, we presented about building an internal social media strategy, and about how before we talk about all these words like engagement or reach and content, it's really about kind of defining your community and your group, and not just about who you are, but how you work, and how social media can become an integrated part of how you work, not just something that's tacked on, but how you can reduce the noise, invite people to join in a way that works for them, and then activate the content that already exists in different places. And one of the things that we talked about was using Yammer to do that, because that's something that has worked really well here at Penn State, and specifically in our group. So nice. There was, my favorite part of the whole thing is that there was great discussion afterwards, just kind of from everyone in the room. It was really cool.
Oh, I am bummed that I missed that one. It sounds like it was a great session. And Dave, I know you also presented. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can be awesome with emerging technologies?
Well, absolutely. One of the things, my topic, unfortunately, was a little, or more than a little bit, but a kind of a sad topic. But we had an experience in 2012 in crisis communications on social media here, where we had a student who was found dead in her dorm room, and her boyfriend was just recently convicted of the murder in a trial. And I talked a lot about in that presentation about how we worked to be really human on social media in the time of crisis. Harkening back to some of the things I touched on earlier, we really worked to get out from behind press releases as a way of communicating with people, and even pushed out some videos that were made during memorial services that were held on campus as a way to engage our community and let them know that there are some humans behind these accounts, and that we're grieving and struggling with them too, and trying to keep them informed and up to date on what was going on, but also to understand just how things were going during that mourning period. And I guess if I can flip that into your question a little bit, is that that I encourage anybody who's out there to use these technologies to remember that you're dealing with human beings as well, and that you sometimes you may feel like you need to hide down in a bunker here and use the traditional corporate crisis mentality, but social media is definitely teaching us that that's not the case anymore. And if you want to be awesome with emerging technologies, you want to speak with a human voice to your audiences.
I love that. And using that human voice, it's so important. And that makes me think of a point that Rick Allen made in his session, where he said, let's get away from using the word authentic, because I think we've just overused this word and it might not have much meaning anymore. But the way that you're kind of framing this, Dave, and using the human voice, it gets at the same point that I think for years we've all been preaching with authenticity. But I think that the way you just frame that does it in a way that if I'm working at an institution working on the web, I can really understand what you mean by that versus this, pie in the sky word, authentic.
I tend to agree. At its heart here, we're all humans, and that you're right. That's pretty easy to understand, and we should all try to remember it as much as possible.
Yeah, I'll say one of my takeaways from the conference. I'm gonna throw this question to myself for a second. I was noticing about 3 sessions in on Monday how nearly every single person was talking about branding or brand strategy, but they never used the words brand or brand strategy, or very few did. And so it was so interesting for me to be watching these sessions and hearing all of this really great content and kind of noticing that everybody was talking about things that build from having a really sound and solid brand and brand strategy at the institution. And I noticed this in Mayan and Elena's track. I noticed this in Tanya Oak-Smith's session. Everything I learned about the web, I learned from the Muppets, I think is what it was called. I was hearing it in the content track, the marketing track. I was hearing this theme come through in the keynotes. And so I actually, in between Monday and Tuesday, I presented on Tuesday, and I kind of revamped the whole first part of my presentation just because I was seeing this theme, and I really felt like it was important to talk about brand strategy a bit. So Patty, I don't know, maybe that's an idea for a future conference, because it was definitely an underlying theme that I noticed without being, the actual theme of the conference itself. So let's talk about the best parts of the web conference. What was fun? Would you attend another one in the future? What did you just really enjoy? Because the keynotes and the sessions are really great, but half of being at a conference is networking, and that's where you really get to know people and build friendships and build a network with your colleagues that you can lean on until you see them at the next conference. So Ryan, how about we start with you? What did you think about the networking at this event, and your favorite parts about the web conference in general?
Yeah, I mean, you touched upon it. I mean, you can go to a conference and really just go for the presentations and the keynotes, but the biggest takeaway that you're going to get from going to any conference, including this one, is really just chatting with people around, people that are in the same field, people that aren't in the same field. You really start to collaborate and get ideas from these conversations and connections that you guys make. So, and I mean, all the receptions, we went to the one that was at the stadium, the one at Home Depot Pizzeria. I mean, these receptions and the in-betweens and the lunch and breakfast, these are the opportunities where you get to make these connections, and maybe you guys keep in touch and talk and follow each other on Twitter. And I mean, I know I've followed a bunch of people on Twitter after this conference, and we've kept in touch post-conference. So, I mean, that was the best thing for me at this conference, but just at any conference, is just connecting with the people that are either talking or listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, what about you?
I'm going to piggyback on what Ryan said a little bit. I mean, for me, it's the inspiration I get out of being at these events and seeing all the energy that's flowing through other people with their great ideas, and whether it's having a conversation with somebody on the shuttle bus to one of the receptions, or sitting in a session, or just shooting the breeze in the hallway. I feel like I get my batteries recharged and come back to the office with some great ideas. And that's just huge, for getting me going again in the office when sometimes you wonder just how tough things have been. So yeah, that was great. And I'll even throw in this: I'm a Notre Dame grad, and I managed to make it out of the Penn State Stadium feeling pretty good. It took a little doing on my part, but that was a great event, and I really enjoyed being able to hang out in there and talk to some folks and have a good time.
That's so funny. And for anybody watching who maybe wasn't at the conference this year, one of the evening's events was at the football stadium, and it was really awesome to be able to go into the stadium when it was completely empty. Very surreal experience, and take photos and you know, have snacks and be looking out, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a very iconic place, particularly for Penn State, but just, I mean, I think in general, it was a really cool spot to hold an event. So kudos, Jennifer and Patty. That was pretty awesome. Laura, how about you? You know, what was your favorite part of the conference?
I mean, not to repeat Dave and Ryan too much, but I'm going to have to agree. It was really the people. Again, just kind of still being new to higher ed, it was really great to make those connections within the industry. And not everybody was entirely new connection, which was nice. A lot of them were people that I've talked to on Twitter, seen on higher ed, hashtag, and so forth. So it was great to put a real face with the name and not just an avatar. And then there were a lot of completely new connections made, and it's really exciting to meet other people doing similar things and brand new things that give you lots of ideas and recharge the batteries again going home.
Jennifer, would you agree with what Ryan, Dave, and Laura have been saying?
Yes, completely. And every single word. It was also really interesting. After what Laura was saying about meeting people, like putting a face with an avatar with a name, first, we have most of our committee meetings via Hangout. So there were even people on the committee that I had never met in person, but I had had meetings with for like months.
Right.
So it was really great to just kind of go out and have fun with them and get to talk and get to learn more about them as people, not as just like, did you do this yet?
Yeah.
But it was
head on a Google Hangout.
So it was, I mean, I just think it was really special, and the people, the recharge, being able to think big again. I love that you get to stop thinking about the details for a few days and just let your imagination run wild and remember the power of what we all do, you know, that it is kind of important and exciting, and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and just in general, you know, professional development opportunities are special and sometimes becoming more rare as budgets shrink or institutions have to scale back. So, Patty, I'd like to start with you on this question. You know, if you do get this awesome opportunity to attend a conference, or particularly the Penn State conference, but any professional development opportunity, you know, how do you make sure that you get the most out of it?
You know, Mallory, I love this question because people ask me this all the time, and I can tell you that the first time I went to the Penn State Web Conference is the first time I went to any big conference like this, and it was in the year 2000. And I was the most vanilla web developer you ever wanted. I knew some HTML, and, you know, this is before we really got into CSS. And so I made myself go to sessions that were above my head. And while some people may not have thought that was a good idea, it made me realize what was possible. And so then I could make the connections back to the people at work who actually knew how to make things happen that I just learned could happen. And so then I felt like I was empowered to go out and learn more and to do more and to find out who could make really cool things happen. So that would be my advice to anybody. Just go to things that are over your head and give it a shot.
For sure. Jennifer, I'd love to throw this one to you as well.
I think that kind of everything that we just said in the last part of this, where we're talking about the people and the freedom to think big, I just can't stress enough how important that is to my job. I know that a conference I went to in the fall was a very similar experience in the sense that it gave me the space. The content of the conference was very different. But one of our biggest marketing campaigns for the year came out of an idea that I'd had while at that conference, because I was able to just think about it and hear different perspectives and see what people are doing. And like Patty said, I love to stretch myself, going to sessions where I wouldn't have an opportunity to learn that otherwise, because that's so important. You know, learning keeps us all alert and alive and excited, and it's just really important, I think, to have things like this.
Yeah. And last person, I'm going to toss this one to Dave. What are your thoughts on professional development opportunities and making the most of them?
You know, it's absolutely huge to be able to take advantage of, and I'll piggyback on what Patty said about stretching yourselves at a conference, but also one of the things that somebody told me a long time ago when I first started going to conferences was just get out and introduce yourself to people and you know, see what you can find out that way. One of the things I try to do at each conference I go to is sit with somebody I don't know for a meal. You know, it's great that we all are so close in this high ed community too, but it's also great to get yourself out there and you know, introduce yourself to a few folks. And I've learned some great things that way. I've met some great people just by plopping myself down and saying hi. And happened again this year at Penn State. So I'd recommend that to anybody who goes to a conference. You know, try that trick and see how it works out for you.
Yeah, that can be a little nerve-wracking, right? It's almost like the cafeteria high school experience all over again, which I always hated. And I find like I will overcompensate for I'm actually an introvert, and so I will very much overcompensate for that by just plopping down and starting to babble to somebody. And I think that, you know, we just have to remember, like, if someone plopped themselves down next to us, we'd be excited about it and chit-chat. So I know that sometimes for me, that's where a little bit of my anxiety comes in. But yeah, I think that's so smart. Just talk to someone you don't know. Like, there's so much you can learn. So I love that. So Patty, before we close out this show, why don't you do a quick plug for next year's conference? Because I'm pretty sure we've convinced everybody watching to check it out.
Okay, great. Yeah, so next year the conference will take place June 22nd through 24th, so be sure to mark that down. We'll again be at the Penn State Conference Center, which we're at every year because they're awesome. And we already have some pretty fun ideas in the works, so, you know, you may want to think about coming to this one. But anyway, I want to make sure that you all know proposals are going to be accepted sort of in the mid-August, mid-October time frame. So be looking out on webconference.psu.edu to see, you know, when those are available. And, you know, you can also check out when the pictures get up, because they're not up yet, but we'll get them up as soon as they're available. You can find the slides. Eventually you'll get the videos from all of the streaming and from the keynote speakers. So, you know, just keep in touch, webconference.psu.edu, and we hope to see you next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of our guests and Patty and Jennifer from the committee and our first-time attendees and our presenters. I think you guys really gave some great insights into what made the web conference at Penn State special this year. And it's been really fun to participate in the back channel. And the hashtag is PSUWeb. It's got a permanent place in my tweet deck, and so I hope it does in everyone else's too, because I think it's a great way where we can keep the conversation going and extend the life of the conference until next year. So thanks as always to our program sponsors, mStoner, OmniUpdate, and FormStack, and please stay tuned to Higher Ed Live and follow us on Twitter. You can get reminders about this and other great shows by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. We'll tweet out a link to that in just a second. You can, of course, always browse our archives at higheredlive.com or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing another conference roundtable wrap-up. The SUNY Quad conference was just about a week and a half ago, and so Fran Zablocki, strategist at mStoner, will be leading that conversation with some conference organizers and attendees and presenters. So we'll be doing the key takeaways from SUNY Quad tomorrow, so I hope to see a lot of you there. It'll be interesting to see if any of the themes from Penn State overlapped at SUNY Quad. I'm interested in finding that out. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we're going to sign off now. We hope to see you next time here at Higher Ed Live. Bye-bye.